All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Brenna Davis, and I am the Director of Environmental Initiatives at the Ignatian Solidarity Network. And so we are happy to have everyone here today and to talk a little bit about the Laudato Si action platform and renewing the earth. So to begin, I'm just going to get my slides up and then we'll get started. And so we're glad to be able to share this Ignatian year together and to also animate the Laudato Si action platform. And so we just wanted to have an introductory meeting to kind of explain the framework of renewing the earth and what we hope to do this year. So first off, I always like to start meetings with a land acknowledgement. And Lena Chapin, who is doing our wonderful tech support today, she and I are in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I'm going to read a land acknowledgement for the land where we currently are. And we just hope that you'll uplift the Native peoples from the land that you are currently occupying. In recognizing the land upon which I reside, I express gratitude to the Native people who lived and worked here before me, those whose stewardship and resilient spirits have sustained this sacred land, which is the traditional homeland of the Erie, Lenape, Shawnee, Wyandot, Miami, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and other Great Lakes tribes. The greater Cleveland area occupies this land as a result of the Treaty of Greenville in 1795. And I also want to acknowledge the nearly 28,000 Native American people who currently live in Northeast Ohio. And I particularly uplift the work of the Lake Erie Native American Council and their recent work to turn out the vote and to complete the census for the Native American population here and to educate our community on issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. May this acknowledgement propel me into concrete action and support of their work. Also like to begin with an acknowledgement of context, and this is something new that I recently read about by a man named Matt Wicking, who is from Australia. And so he begins every meeting with this kind of acknowledgement of the global context and the global moment in which we're living. And so we're just going to take a moment to acknowledge the context within which we gather. We meet at a time when the human species is having an unprecedented impact on the planet. And we do this at the beginning of this gathering as a reminder that the discussions we have here, the decisions we make, and any actions we take as a result will have consequences for other people and other species, both those living now as well as future generations. Thank you. So glad to see everyone here. So to begin, we're just going to begin with our theme for this month. So we are thinking about the Laudato Si action platform, and kind of our agenda for today is we're going to begin with a prayer, and then we're going to walk through what the Laudato Si action platform is and how renewing the earth, this program about living out Laudato Si in the year of Ignatius, kind of how we plan to proceed with that. And so, this year marks the 500th anniversary of St. Ignatius being hit by a cannonball and his moment of conversion. When his leg was hit, he convalesced, and that was really what changed his life and caused him to ultimately found the Society of Jesus. And I would particularly like to thank Jesuit priest Rob McChesney and Eric Clayton, who's the Deputy Director of Communications for the Jesuit Conference in the United States, because they pointed something out this week. And what we don't often hear about this cannonball moment, this moment of conversion, is the story leading up to this moment. So in St. Ignatius's Pilgrim's Testament, it tells us that because of his pride, St. Ignatius would not give up the fight with the French. So he convinced his commander to keep fighting, even though everybody knew that surrender was imminent and was ultimately what they were going to need to do. And so because of this, many people, such as Ignatius, were injured and many died as a result. And so as we're thinking about this moment in which we're living, this environmental moment as a cannonball moment, we're really invited to think about the collateral damage of the cannonball moment. We are invited to think about how maybe our own pride and our own kind of focus on ourselves instead of the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor have led us to this moment that we are in, and how we are called to conversion and to change our ways and to use the model of St. Ignatius to move us forward. So as we think about this moment, we consider, are there prideful ways of thinking and being that are amplifying this ecological crisis? And who is mostly directly impacted by these actions? Are we hearing the cry of the poor and the vulnerable in this moment? And where do we need to go? And so what we will do now is we're just going to begin with a brief prayer. And this is going to be sent out to you tomorrow so that you can share this with your community if you feel so inclined. It is a cannonball examine, but it's an examine of the cannonball moment in conversation with this ecological crisis. And this examine is based off of an examine written by Dr. Joan Knuth from John Carroll University. So there's a sense in which the moment in which we're living is a cannonball experience, especially as we grapple with the impacts of climate change and the grim reality painted by the most recent report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that came out last week. As it was for Ignatius, we are being called to leave behind our ordinary way of living and to enter into a time of conversion and discernment as we reflect on creation and how we can best live in our families, with our friends, in our institutions, in ways that promote abundant life. So I just invite you to get into a comfortable position, take a deep breath, feel free to shut off your camera if you'd like, to close your eyes. We begin by remembering that we are in the presence of our loving God, and by thanking God for this moment. As always, we begin in gratitude. So express thanksgiving to God for being with you today and every day of your life thus far. What would you like to thank God for? Is there any particular aspect of creation that sparks awe or wonder in you, and from which gratitude wells up? How do you experience God loving you through creation? Now we ask for the light of the Holy Spirit to help us see with clarity where God has been in our lives recently. Where has God shown up in your relationships with your neighbors, with the earth, with yourself, with all of creation? Ask for the grace to view yourself without judgment, without complacency, and thus be open to growth in your life with God. I invite you to look back over the past week in more detail. Where did you meet God? Where might you have missed or resisted God's urgings? Particularly this week, what feelings accompany you as you consider the ecological cannonball moment we find ourselves in? Turmoil, anxiety, fear, freedom, awe, joy. anticipation, creativity, humor, grief. A minute to notice whether these events or feelings lead you toward or away from God. Are there any particular areas where God might be calling you to deeper conversion? Now we transition into our need for God. Are there ways in which we have allowed pride or convenience to dampen our ability to hear the cry of the earth and the most vulnerable? Express regret and sorrow for where you have been unfaithful to God. Express gratitude for where you are unable to respond to God heartily. Finally, transition to moving forward. Take a moment to ask God to help us use the experiences from our own lives and the lessons from the life of St. Ignatius as inspiration for our ability to move forward, for our continuing conversion. Consider some specific ways that you hope to move forward in this year of Ignatius as we live out the Laudato Si action platform. Finally, just take a moment to close your prayer with God in whatever way you feel moved. Amen. And so now, sorry, my slideshow just hopped right ahead there. So now we're going to get into kind of more specifics about the Laudato Si action platform, and I am going to invite some of my colleagues from the Jesuit Conference of the US and Canada to share a little bit about their hopes and dreams for this process as well. But really where this came from was we were having conversations about the fact that it is the year of St. Ignatius, and it is an important year in which the Laudato Si action platform is being launched. And we just thought, what a gift that these two things are happening at the same time, and how might our reliance upon Ignatian spirituality and just the beautiful lessons from St. Ignatius's life might guide us through this Laudato Si action platform process. So just for a little bit of context, because we understand that the Ignatian year is not the best known kind of event that's happening this year in the Laudato Si action platform. I think a lot of people have questions about it. I just want to give a concise history of kind of how we got to where we are. So as we know, Laudato Si was published in 2015, and then in 2020 to celebrate the anniversary of 5 years of Laudato Si, Pope Francis actually announced that we were going to have a year-long celebration. The Laudato Si year began, and that year had been planned obviously before the pandemic, and so people lived that out in the ways that they were able, holding the realities of the pandemic. In 2021, the Vatican did a soft launch of the Laudato Si action platform, and basically what this is meant to do is it's just meant to very simply help different sectors of the church to implement Laudato Si. So Laudato Si was this beautiful encyclical, this beautiful document, and Pope Francis was really thinking, how do we systematize this? How do we empower people in their local communities to find really concrete ways to live this out? And so that's the hope and dream of the Laudato Si action platform at its most basic level. So we have some details about the platform already on the Vatican website, but actually the full launch is going to be happening in October. So we find ourselves in kind of this in-between time. In the present moment, we are just doing outreach to let people know that this is happening, using what the Vatican has already provided to begin our journey of discernment. And at this point, the Vatican is accepting pledges from different sectors of the church. So people who are saying, you know, my family, my organization, my school, my community, we are planning to create some sort of Laudato Si action plan. And so we are pledging our commitment now that we are beginning this journey. So we will have more details in October, and the Vatican is planning on sending out lots of resources, and I think very practical resources for people. But in the meantime, we're kind of living in a little bit of the mystery as to how we're going to live this out. And then beyond October, this is meant to be a 7-year journey. So we make these pledges and we discern how we are feeling called to live this out in our communities, and then we actually implement them in the next 7 years. And so right now, I would briefly like to turn it over to Meg from the conference office, just to share a little bit about what's happening at the Jesuit conference. We are working together on this initiative. And so I just want to give a little space for them to share some updates on their end.
Hi, everyone. As Brenna said, my name is Megan Leach. I'm the communications manager for the Jesuit Conference Office of Justice and Ecology. My colleague Cecilia Calvo is also on the call. She's the environmental policy advisor. So I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with our work, but for those of you who are not, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what the Office of Justice and Ecology does. So we're the advocacy wing of the Jesuits in the US primarily, although we're part of the Conference of Canada and the United States. So a lot of our work is concerned with legislative advocacy, whether that's on issues of, for example, just transition from fossil fuel energy to more renewable energy, or toward funding for marginalized communities impacted by disasters, natural disasters. But something that we're really excited to work with ISN about is the Laudato Si action platform and plan, and really empowering the Jesuit network to make individual changes that the Vatican is calling for, but to also be thinking about these advocacy opportunities and opportunities for systemic change through legislative and executive action for those of us based in the US. As well, something that we're kind of working on is collaboration with the Jesuits in Rome and the Global Society, and how they're responding to the plan and to the platform. So we think about this very much as a top-down and a bottom-up approach, as providing tools and resources through this campaign with ISN, as well as looking to you in your communities and learning more about what you are doing, what you're already doing, and what you're committing to doing in the next 7 years, and being able to document that and track that and kind of provide a timeline. And as Brenna already mentioned, not last or least, spirituality is a very important part of that as well. And something that the Pope has stressed very much with this platform is its adaptability to different charisms. And what does the unique charism of Ignatian spirituality have to say about discernment and about journeys, especially with an issue that is so huge? So we're really thankful for this opportunity this year to kind of bring these two parts together, to take a really holistic look at the platform, and to also, I think, share learning, both what we know at the conference level, the advocacy and the work that we're doing, but also the work that you're doing, and the progress that you're making toward these goals. I think little by little, that makes things feel a little more achievable, especially when we're, as Brenna noted in the opening, at a huge watershed moment in our global climate context that can feel a little bit overwhelming. So that's kind of the conference's aim, is to provide some accompaniment, both spiritually and pragmatically. I'm not sure, Cecilia, if you have anything you wanted to add. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to Brenna.
Thanks, Meg, and thanks, Brenna. So happy that we can be with all of you, and both of you have laid it out beautifully. I think I'm excited to see how we're able to work together and accompany all of you in our Ignatian and Jesuit family, Catholic family, in this path toward integral ecology that Pope Francis has invited us to. And in the Laudato Si goals, as Brenna showed, kind of connecting our actions, our lifestyles to the cry of the earth and the cry of the poor, and really just trying to, look at how is everything interconnected, as Pope Francis had asked us, and how can we be a part of this journey within, as individuals, within our families, within our parish, our school and our university, in being able to be a part of this change, and how can we, through discernment, through these tools that we have within Ignatian spirituality, how can those help us on this path towards ecological conversion and action? So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Cecilia. And so basically, for the rest of the meeting, what we are going to do is I'm just, again, going to just very briefly go over the Laudato Si action platform, and then we'll actually have some time for Q&A and for small group discussion. Our hope is that that this space will provide lots of opportunity to converse and share best practices. So for anyone who hasn't seen the platform yet, and I will send out this link in the email, the follow-up email, it's laudatosiactionplatform.org. And basically there you will see the 7 goals: response to the cry of the earth, to the cry of the poor, ecological economics, adoption of sustainable lifestyles, ecological education, eco-spirituality, and then community engagement and participatory action. And so we are invited to think about and to discern, how are we being called in our own communities to live out all of these goals? And is there a particular goal that we feel is kind of most urgent, or is one where our talents might be guiding us to take particular action? So the 7 sectors that are being invited to participate are families, parishes and dioceses, educational institutions, healthcare institutions, nonprofits and groups, and then the economic sector and religious communities. And so on the Laudato Si Action Platform website on October 4th, they will actually have specific suggestions for how each of these sectors can implement or begin to action plan in their own community. We did invite individuals to sign up to do Renewing the Earth, and individuals are welcome here. I am a single person, so I wouldn't have a family to do this with, but I might join my parish community, or ISN as an organization will be thinking about how to live out the Laudato Si action platform. And so we really invite you, if you did sign up as an individual, is there a way that you might gather together a small group of people for support and to help sustain this action? Because what we know to be true, especially at schools we see and at parishes, is that there's usually a small group of people that are very excited about working on ecological issues. And even though we can see that the Laudato Si action platform is about integral ecology and is so much more than, just shutting off the water or the adoption of kind of those simple lifestyle habits, it's a piece of it, but it's not everything. And so, we are invited to, as communities, really discern how we will live this out. So speaking of discernment, that is the point of the renewing the earth, is to really help us think about where are we currently going and where are we being called. And a moment from St. Ignatius's life that I think is very beautiful is the Cardinal Vision. And it is just the moment in his life where he is just sitting and staring at a river. And he doesn't, it isn't mentioned very clearly in the Pilgrim's Testament what happens in that moment, but he says that it is this life-changing moment that he has in nature, just kind of taking some time and space. And so, how are we being invited into a similar moment to, again, to experience this conversion and to move forward as a community? So the goals of renewing the earth are to basically provide a spiritual framework to this process, to really use moments from St. Ignatius's life and Ignatian spirituality to complement the platform, and to convene spaces where people can pray and discern together. So I think that there will be lots of resources on the Laudato Si Action Platform website. There will be a lot of webinars, and I think that we believe that actually getting the Ignatian family in a virtual room together to actually have conversations will help to sustain the process and will help us feel kind of less isolated as we are trying to do this work. We also would like to provide ongoing support and motivation and to answer any questions that you have. If we don't know the answers, we're partnered with a lot of people who might be able to help us figure that out. And then for you all to share best practices and updates with one another, and to share and celebrate successes. That is such a big part of the gospel and of Jesus's life is celebrating. And so especially in this moment that we find ourselves, we really want to celebrate the wins that we have in our communities. And so the way that this will look is that each month we will send out an email, and that will have a learn, pray, act component. The learn component will really be some sort of reflection on the theme for that month. So an element of Laudato Si Action Platform in conversation with Ignatian spirituality. There will be some sort of prayer that is presented, and then we will provide suggested actions for that month to help you continue the discernment process. We'll also provide a connection. So each month we will be having a meeting like this. We're going to try to vary the time so that people can join if the afternoon is not always convenient. And then again, to provide ongoing support and motivation. So we hope that if you come up with resources, that we'll be able to share those out with the network, because we know that really you all, in the principle of subsidiarity, those of us who are working in our local communities know our local communities best. And so we really want to uplift the work that you are doing in your communities and really share that out with people so that we can support each other on the journey. So for example, for August, our kind of theme was the environmental crisis as a cannonball moment. The cannonball examen is the prayer experience for this month. And then our suggested action will be to actually go through and read the Laudato Si action plan goals, especially if you haven't done that yet, and consider which goals feel most urgent in your community or which goals you feel most excited to kind of use your talents to address. And then our connection for this month is this introductory meeting. So this is just to kind of show you the framework. I'll be sending out an email with all of the resources later this week and with this recording for August. And then we'll try to get the September resources out the last week of August, so you have them for the month of September, because we hope that you will use these in your communities and in your classrooms or at your parishes, wherever you are engaging in your families. So right now, I would love to open it up to some Q&A that I have done a lot of talking. And basically our plan for the rest of our time together is we're going to just do a little bit of Q&A, and then we're going to break up into breakout groups just to have kind of a first introductory conversation about how you're feeling, where you're feeling energy, where there might still be some confusion. But for now, feel free. You can either unmute yourself or put questions in the chat. And I am happy to answer them to the best of my ability. And if I cannot, Cecilia might jump in as well. Wonderful. So someone said, please describe the soft launch. And so basically, the soft launch of the platform was really just the Vatican announcing that the action platform was forthcoming. At this point, I don't think they had even launched the website yet. And additionally, they had about 50 groups around the world who were doing kind of a pilot run of implementing action plans. And so kind of the soft launch was also working with those 50 groups to kind of work through the process one time and to see how it goes. So that is the soft launch. Cecilia, if you want to jump in, if you have any other details about the soft launch, feel free to.
Yeah, you got it, Brenna. I think the Vatican may have had a press conference also as part of the soft launch. And I was just about to Google that and see if I can put it in the chat for you all. But I think, yeah, that was the main component, is kind of the announcement, because the website was not up at that point.
And I just saw another question come in about individual dioceses receiving some sort of information about the initiative. So I do know that a letter was sent from the Vatican to each of the bishops. And I think that the bishops are then invited to share it out to the diocese. And that is kind of all of the information I have about that. In this current moment, it does seem like this was not a very strong top-down mandate. It was not telling the bishops, like, you must, hire someone to implement the platform at the diocesan level, but really just asking the bishops to share information with priests and offices in each individual diocese. So if you haven't heard anything from your diocese yet, maybe a little bit a part of your kind of initial action planning could be to reach out to your bishop and to say, hey, we've heard about this wonderful initiative coming from the Vatican. And so, like, what are we going to do? So that's what I understand so far. Again, Cecilia, feel free to jump in with any extra information.
You got it.
Cool. We'll come back to the questions in the chat. I see that Bobby has his hand raised. So Bobby, feel free to ask your question. Good to see you.
Hi, Brenna. Good to see you too. Thank you so much for doing this. My name is Bobby Carlin, Jesuit priest in Ann Arbor, Michigan at the St. Mary Student Parish. Just wondering if you know of like a checklist that we could use, like at whatever institution we might be part of, or a Jesuit community we are part of like kind of low-hanging fruit and things we can do. So like both a checklist, and then also like in like there was a continuum or like different columns for dismantling racism or becoming a more inclusive institution. I wonder if there's something like that for ecology too, so we could say like, okay, here we are and here are steps we could take. Do you or anybody else know of either one of those type of resources?
Again, with the soft launch and the hard launch, we have been told that all of these kind of checklists are going to appear on the Vatican website on October 4th by sector. So that, if you're working at a school or a parish, there for each of the 7 goals, there will be a checklist that says, if you're at a school and you want to work on hearing the cry of the earth, here's a checklist of items that you can do. But it is a little bit of a mystery still to us yet that the Vatican has the global church working on creating these checklists and have created task forces. We are hoping to release something kind of like that. So this is kind of a resource that we're hoping to generate with just suggestions for kind of low-hanging fruit, but this is a good reminder. I will attach the Archdiocese of Atlanta was like on top of this. And I actually heard that they started to make a Laudato Si action plan, I believe in 2016. So right after Laudato Si came out, and they actually got it into the hands of Pope Francis. And the way I heard it told was that was a little bit of the inspiration for the platform. So I also highly recommend, I'll link this in the email tomorrow, but if you Google Diocese of Atlanta Laudato Si action plan, they already have one, and it's really cool because they have steps categorized as easy, moderate, and hard. So I am planning to put a Google folder together and share everything out with folks with just really great resources that we're seeing come in thus far. But that's a great question. And if you generate that resource with your students, please share it with us so that we can share it with the rest of the network. Great. Cecilia, anything to add? Always feel free to jump in. Actually, Cecilia, would you be willing to answer this question? Margarita asked, how are you connected internationally with the Jesuits around the world?
Sure. So our conference, we work with the Social Justice and Ecology Secretariat in Rome for the Society of Jesus, and together through different networks, such as, for example, Eco-Jesuit, which is an international Jesuit ecology network. We work across the regions, across the regions within the around the world on ecological efforts and movements. And we also partner with the global church in efforts connected to ecology and climate change.
Thanks, Cecilia. And thank you to everyone who are adding the resources to the chat. I really appreciate that. We feel empowered to share resources with one another. And the next question was, are there existing action plans that could serve as a model? So there are some that are out there. And thank you to everyone who's putting that information in the chat. I will coalesce it into one email. I see that Kathy says, I'm with a smaller nonprofit. What plans will be set up ahead for action plans we can support and how? So again, I think that basically what is being asked of the global church is to really to create your own action plan. So like on the October 4th, there are going to be a bunch of resources put out there, and they are going to guide us in our process of creating action plans. And what we are hoping to do, again, with Renewing the Earth, is to have continual conversations that are really practical about how do we implement these action plans, what are our next steps. So we hope that we'll be able to help with that process. Also understanding that we still don't know what the Vatican resources are going to be, so we're kind of building the boat as we're sailing it. I see there's a question, is there a letter that can be provided for school administrators? Cecilia, do you know if there's any sort of formal letter from the Vatican specifically for schools?
I don't know, Brenna. That's an excellent question. Kind of is there a invitation letter from the Vatican or from the dicastery for human development to schools? I don't know. I think we can check on that, and I can see how that that would be something that's helpful for folks to kind of perhaps have that invitation coming right to your school, or perhaps to Jesuit schools network, right, to kind of to be able to, as an impetus, to be able to garner energy around this and feel more empowered in the process.
And I think that relates to the next question that I'm seeing from Deacon Clayton. How are we cooperating with the Laudato Si movement and Catholic Climate Covenant to minimize silos? And I think that is a wonderful question. So we actually, Cecilia and I met with Paz from Catholic Climate Covenant, and I'm in constant conversation with Angelica from the Laudato Si movement. And really, basically, the Catholic Climate Covenant is, I meant to put a chart because it's a little confusing. The Catholic Climate Covenant is kind of leading the way in the United States in terms of implementing the Laudato Si action platform. So they have created a website, and I will also link to this. It's called God's Planet, where everything related to the Laudato Si action platform in the United States will be hosted. So events, resources, anything like that. And so we met with Pause because I wanted to make sure we would not be stepping on any toes, or, maybe this, just to make sure that this process would be helpful. And basically what she said was that we need communities to kind of, we need to animate our communities. And so, if we want to have an Ignatian network to kind of support each other along in this process, that doesn't seem to hinder the overall process. So I'm sure that there will be tons of resources coming from the Laudato Si movement. There'll be webinars hosted by Catholic Climate Covenant. And we're all working towards the same goal. And so we're just trying to support you. So whatever resources feel helpful in your community's action planning, that's what we're trying to provide. And so we're not trying to saturate the market, because we know that can happen at times. I see that Simone has their hand raised. So.
Yes, I would like to ask a question, follow-up question about that. For there is this petition, Global Planet Healthy People, from the Laudato Si movement, and I'm actually one of those multiplying it. And then there is this petition now from the Covenant, Catholic Covenant, and I'm just wondering how you bring these two together.
It's an excellent question. If I can help answer that one, Brenna. I was thinking about that when the question came up around how are we working together in the Catholic family. And as you know, recently there was the US Laudato Si conference that Catholic Climate Covenant and Creighton co-hosted together virtually. And that's where they launched this Catholic climate letter to President Biden related to COP26, calling for US leadership in terms of reducing our emissions, but also calling for a just transition, right? And actually, many of us work together, including Sisters of Mercy, Columbans, the Jesuit Conference, our Office of Justice and Ecology, Catholic Climate Covenant. Many of us came together to work on that petition together. And we really wanted to bring a Catholic voice within the US, and speaking to the importance of US leadership for COP26. So that, I think it highlights kind of so we are working together. And I think it also highlights one of these structural elements, right? So it's not only about individual change, but it's also about structural change. And how can we come together as a Catholic family in the US and around the world to advocate for those kind of policies that help create that structural change. So we are working together on that. And we've also been sharing the other petition you mentioned by the Global Catholic Climate Movement, together with the dicastery,
Laudato Si movement, they changed the name.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, the Laudato Si movement. Thank you. The Laudato Si movement, the Healthy Planet.
Healthy People, Healthy Planet,
Healthy Planet.
And petition. The URL is actually Catholic Climate Petition also. So there the Catholic is in the URL, not in the name per se, yes, but in the URL.
Yes, and the catholicpetition.org, yes. I believe. And that one's connected to both COP15 related to biodiversity and the climate change COP26 that's coming up. So it's a call around, as you know, the biodiversity and around climate change to leaders around the world. So we're promoting both of these petitions. I see a question that came up on the deadline. As far as for the US Catholic climate letter related to COP26, so far that's October 4th, the Feast of St. Francis, the deadline for signatures. And you can sign on as an individual or as an institution. And I'm not sure, you may know, Simone, of the deadline for the Healthy Planet, Healthy People petition. I don't recall.
Well, it's a kind of, they say early or mid-October latest somehow, but it includes the November date as well. So you can go to the end of October.
We are planning on, for each of our kind of the actions that we send out each month, we are going to be including these petitions. We understand that there is a lot of information coming at you from a lot of organizations. And so we are communicating with each other, and really Renewing the Earth is just trying to kind of pass along the good work that's already happening, put an Ignatian spin on it, and get people in the room to speak to each other about our action planning process and our discernment process on how we will live this out moving forward. And Cecilia will, we will have more information about COP26 in Scotland. We will provide, so the conference will provide actions for that, because Cecilia is doing a lot of planning around that. So. Great. If there are not any more questions, I am hoping that we can get into breakout rooms just very quickly, just because I would like for you to be able to connect with each other. I know that our time is running short, but we are going to put folks into breakout rooms just for about 5 minutes. So again, if you, I know sometimes people don't like to to be in breakout conversations, but we are hoping that that will be the bulk of all of our meetings moving forward. We just had some details to work out this time through. So I will share some questions in the chat. Basically, we are going to be inviting you to talk about kind of where you are in terms of integrating the Laudato Si action platform at your institution or at your parish or at your school, or, you know, or are you just hearing about it for the first time, like through this campaign? We're all at different points in the journey. What excites you about this process, and what do you see as potential roadblocks? And then, you know, if you have, what questions do you have, or what resources do you need? And I think some of that was already coming up in our Q&A session. So I'm going to put those questions in the chat right now. So I hope that you were able to have some conversation, and again, in our future meetings, the groups will be smaller and the time to converse will be longer. Just wanted to thank you all again for being here today. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have any resources that you'd like to share, and I will just stick on for as long as people would like, if anyone wants to hang back and ask any questions or just have any conversation. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll be reaching out shortly with resources.